Having previously spoken in part two of the video on the state parks of southern New Jersey, starting with Island Beach State Park and finishing off with Bass River State Forest, I will now continue with state parks along the Delaware River and Delaware Bay, going into Cape May at the southern tip of the state. And that begins with Fort Mott State Park at just 64 acres acquired by the state in 1951. Fort Mott was built in 1872 to protect the Delaware River and Philadelphia from a foreign invasion, named in honor of New Jersey native General Gershom Mott, who served in the Mexican and Civil Wars. Built here on the mouth of the Delaware River. Battery Arnold and Battery Harker within the fort are also named for two New Jersey generals. The former fought in the Seminole, Mexican, and Civil Wars, and the latter fought in the Civil War. Fort Mott became obsolete after World War I, but remained a military base for a bit longer into the 1950s. It's also connected with Fort Delaware and Delaware City by a seasonal passenger ferry operated by Fort Delaware State Park. And that brings me to another interesting curiosity within this fortress park, the pier that connects to the ferry. You see, when the border between the colonies of Delaware and New Jersey was created, the border line would run along the low tidal point, the low tide mark of the Delaware River. And so, with land reclamation, there were lands connected to New Jersey that ended up legally as part of Delaware. And that includes the ferry pier within Fort Mott State Park, from which visitors can take a ferry to Fort Delaware on Peapatch Island in Delaware River that belongs to Delaware. On the other side of the river is Delaware City with its own state parks, a wildlife area, and the Delaware Chesapeake Canal that connects to Chesapeake Bay. So here in this aerial view, you can see two spots where New Jersey and Delaware share a land border. This is a picture of Fort Delaware, just across the river from New Jersey's Fort Mott. Fort Mott State Park really also has a national cemetery for veterans. Hancock House State Historic Site, 2.5 acres, located in Salem County. This house was built in 1734 for Judge William and Sarah Hancock, featuring Flemish bond brickwork with blue glazed bricks. And you can see the designs here on the bricks includes the year of the house being built and the initials of its owners. Popular among the Quakers of the colonial period, as you know, neighboring Pennsylvania, a colony founded by Quakers. So Hancock House also included some Quaker history. But its major historical event took place in 1778, when Major John Graves Simcoe of the Queen's Rangers led approximately 300 British soldiers through the marsh and across Alloway Creek to surround Hancock House. At approximately 5 a.m. on March 24, 1778, they entered the house, surprising the local militia here. And then there was a massacre that also included among its victims Judge Hancock, who happened to be a loyalist. He was also among those killed in this firefight. The Hancock House remained in the Hancock family until 1931, after which it was given to the state, which acquired it for just $4,000, turning it into a museum. Besides the revolutionary history and the architecture of the Hancock House, there's also Swedish history here that includes a Swedish cabin. The Hancock House also has women's history, including Cornelia Hancock, who was a teacher, nurse, and a social reformer, and one of her nursing duties included the Battle of Gettysburg, tending to the soldiers there, and after the war, creating a school for former slaves in Philadelphia and in Wrightsville. So there's anti-slavery history also associated with this Hancock House State Historic Site. Stowe Creek State Park is 1,091 acres, has a saltwater marsh and a series of parcels preserved near Bridgeton. There's no visitor center here, just parking lots and a boat launch and some abandoned homes in this nature preserve on the salt marsh. Parvin State Park. This is 465 acres acquired by state in 1931 as a mix of pine barrens and marshland. The first recorded European settlement in the area was in 1742. 1796, Lemuel Parvin settled in what is now the park, damming the Muddy Run to create a sawmill that became Parvin Lake. Developed by the Civilian Conservation Corps in the 1930s as a park, it was used in 1943 as a summer camp for children of interned Japanese Americans. Yes, that racist moment in our wartime history. 1944, the park was used as a prisoner of war camp for German soldiers captured in northern Africa. And in 1952, during the Cold War, the park was used as temporary housing for Kalmyk refugees. Kalmyks are descendants of Mongols who settled in southern Russia creating their own state of Kalmykia. And those who wanted to preserve their way of life and religion fled to the west. And there are now Kalmyk communities in southern New Jersey and Philadelphia. And this park served as a temporary place of stay for them as they made their way to America after World War II. This is Parvin State Park. You can see a Thunder Gust Lake area has a historical sign mentioning the Civilian Conservation Corps that turned the swamp into parkland. Belle Plaine State Forest, 21,320 acres, acquired by the state in 1928. Civilian Conservation Corps set up camps here in 1933 and converted the Meisel Cranberry Bog into Lake Nummi, constructing the original forest headquarters, maintenance building, road system, bridges, and dams. The forest includes recreational facilities and a freshwater beach, too. On June 7, 2002, the Green Acres program added 230 acres of privately owned land to Belle Plaine State Forest, but you can see on the map there's still some private parcels within this state forest. And this yellow line here is the Seashore Line Trail. The Seashore Line Trail is a rail trail, a former railway, turned into a bike and pedestrian path that used to connect Philadelphia to Cape May. It's part of a larger vision to create a pedestrian path running from the Philadelphia area to Cape May. So no longer by train, but now by bike and by foot. This proposed Cape May Trail. And you can see within southern New Jersey, a lot of former railways, some still abandoned, some repurposed for bikes and people. And makes me think perhaps they would be better off as trains, but they would have to be profitable considering the high cost of running the trains. Anyway, it's easier to abandon a train line than to restore it. So for now, it stays empty as nature reclaims the tracks around Belle Plaine State Forest. Corson's Inlet State Park, 341 acres acquired by the state in 1969. In 2012, the park received a $5,850 federal grant to construct a 300-foot boardwalk trail, creating a loop in the park, matched with money from New Jersey State Park Service. There are two endangered species that inhabit the park, the piping plover and the sea beach amaranth, which is a plant. Sports fishing vehicles with permits can drive on the beach and the park trails. Poet A.R. Ammons wrote one of his best-known poems, Corson's Inlet, about this land. And looking at it on the map, it's a sand spit shaped by the tides and the oceanic currents. So where nature sculpts the shoreline at Corson's Inlet State Park. Cape May Point State Park is the southernmost state park in New Jersey. 244 acres, designated as state park in 1972, with its centerpiece being the 157-foot lighthouse, where Delaware Bay meets the Atlantic Ocean. The first known lighthouse at Cape May was built in 1823. By 1847, a new lighthouse was erected on a high bluff. However, due to encroaching sea and the poor building design, it was dismantled. 1859, the current lighthouse was built using bricks from the original lighthouse. Within this park is also Battery 223, built as part of the Harbor Defense Project of 1942 to defend against Nazi submarines that would encroach towards the American waters. The gun emplacement here was once 900 feet inland, surrounded by earth covered by sod to make it look like a hill from the ocean. But periods of coastal erosion and storms have washed away much of the sand surrounding the gun emplacement, and now it sits on the beach close to the water. So you think of sea level rise and the shifting coastline, Battery 223 is an example of that. Later converted to a sound surveillance system in the early years of the Cold War and decommissioned in 1962. Having spoken about Cape May Point State Park, besides the lighthouse, you have USS Atlantis, a concrete boat off the coast of Sunset Beach, which looks west. There's a World War II lookout tower within the park, wildlife management areas surrounding the park, a saltwater marsh, ponds, lighthouse, and a visitor center next to the scenic village. So you can see you can go inside the lighthouse, walk the trails here. There's the explanatory sign talking about the World War II bunker at Cape May Point State Park. And now, having mentioned in an earlier video about a proposed state park at Patterson Falls that became a national park site, there's another proposed state park, and that is the Capitol State Park that was first proposed in 2006. It's being developed right now and will include the buildings of the Capitol Complex in Trenton, where the state capitol building is, and some of the office buildings around it. It would include the waterfront areas along the Delaware River and the Assunpink Creek, celebrating Trenton's Native American, colonial, Revolutionary War heritage, its ethnic history, and its industrial heritage. It would be connected to the Essex, Hudson, other state parks here I'll talk about it in a bit. But you can see within the proposed state park, this is where the Delaware River goes from its cataracts, including Delaware Falls, which is really just rapids, towards the tidal section, which is why Trenton was built where it is. It's where the sea level portion of the Delaware River ends. You can see old railway and road bridges here being repurposed as pedestrian bridges. And some of the buildings here. You can see a little portion of a creek here being restored, as well as along Assunpink Creek, some daylighting going on. Daylighting is when an underground stream is brought back to the surface. One example here being Petty's Run Culvert, covered up in the late 19th century, now proposed for a revival right next to the State House. And you can see at the mouth of Assunpink Creek, hanging bridges with plants proposed for a state park and a large oval lawn in front of the Capitol building. Overlooking the Delaware River, there's the proposed Capitol State Park. Another proposed state park is the Essex Hudson Greenway, which was abandoned in 2020 and acquired by the state a year later. The Essex Hudson Greenway would be New Jersey's answer to the High Line, connecting the highly urban Jersey City and Hoboken, running through the Meadowlands, salt marshes, towards Glenridge and Montclair. And looking at this landscape, there's a lot of industrial history here that's been reclaimed by nature, highways crossing through the wetlands, and former train lines. Perhaps this area is in need of transit, but there are train lines nearby, such as the PATH and the other branches of the New Jersey Transit. So this is a next proposed state park, a linear park from Montclair to Jersey City. Having spoken about the state parks of New Jersey, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave your comments on this video and the earlier videos. And my goal for creating this video is, perhaps if the State Park Service sees it, I would be happy to be a guide, perhaps a ranger or a planner or an administrator for this agency, having earned my experience in New York City. And now, another thing I would like you to put in the comments, where should I go next? Because so many states have books about their state parks, including Pennsylvania, Virginia, Missouri, New York, Iowa, Wisconsin, Texas. There's a National Geographic Guide to state parks. It doesn't have all of them, but just some of the more famous ones. So do leave a comment if you'd like to see another state in this series. Thank you so much, and I hope to continue making these videos. And you can see here some of the logos of the other agencies, and as well as closer to home, Nassau County, close to where I live, and the National Park Service, which has more than 400 sites throughout the nation.